Hey everyone, could the fix that would save Social Security be so obvious that we haven't paid attention to it? Or worse, is it being ignored because it doesn't create more power for the politicians? Is it really possible that we could fix this massive program that's quickly running out of money and fix it without raising taxes or cutting benefits? Well, I'm here to tell you it's possible, and in today's video, I'm going to tell you how this could happen. The Congressional Budget Office predicts that the Social Security Trust Fund will exhaust its reserves by 2032. And if the inflationary pressure stay high, that will likely be moved up some. So whoever wins this upcoming election, they could be the one that make changes to how Social Security works. And if you want to stay informed, you need to be subscribed to this channel and have notifications turned on as well. So the other day, I was doing my typical reading in the morning when I saw this piece in Market Watch, which was written by Brett Ahrens. The title is, "Think Donald Trump has promised not to change Social Security? Think again." Well, obviously, I like to read stuff about Social Security, so I was intrigued enough to click. And by the way, I think it's ridiculous how the last 3 presidential administrations have said almost nothing about the pending shortfall of the Social Security Trust Fund. And I knew that while Trump was in office, he said very little about his ideas to reform the program. Basically, it was leave it alone and it'll be fine. So when I saw this article, it made me wonder if I may have missed some news about something that Donald Trump said about Social Security. So the article opens up by talking about how the author has tried to get in touch with the Trump campaign to talk about Social Security, but the response has not been that great. And then he goes on to say that Trump is poised to become the Republican presidential nominee, and then references several polls that suggest Trump also has the edge to win the general election in November. And then he makes a statement that I agree with 100%. He said, if there's even a chance that Trump will be elected president and a 100% chance that Social Security will be hurtling very close towards insolvency while he is in the White House, I think he ought to be answering some clear questions clearly. Again, I agree. The only thing we've gotten out of Trump in the past is that he vows to never cut Social Security.
Under no circumstances should Republicans vote to cut a single penny from Medicare or Social Security, but do not cut the benefits our seniors worked for and paid for their entire lives. Save Social Security. Don't destroy it.
So he's pretty clear. He is not going to be in support of any legislation that will cut Social Security. But as the author of this article astutely points out, we won't cut Social Security is not the same as saying we won't change Social Security. And then the article took a turn into a policy proposal that I'd read about at one time, but mostly forgotten about because over the last 3 years, the only proposals that we've heard for fixing Social Security is to raise taxes on higher income earners and a few other really convoluted things. But this article referenced a blog post that the Cato Institute put out that I had never read, and it was titled, "Social Security Benefits Are Growing Too Fast." The opening of this article says, here's an unpopular opinion. Social Security benefits are growing too fast. And this excessive benefit growth is one of the key reasons the program is unsustainable. You know, that made me stop and think. I help a lot of wealthy retirees build plans for their retirement income and then serve as their guide on the retirement journey. Most of the people that I help have between $1.5 and $6 million or so. But one thing I've noticed is that for most of them, Social Security is about half of their income. I mean, it's fairly common that we'll see a couple who between them are collecting $70,000 a year or more in benefits. You know, when President Roosevelt signed Social Security into law, he referred to it as a law which will give some measure of protection to the average citizen and to his family against the loss of a job and against poverty-ridden old age. So what was once created as an anti-poverty program has now become a program that redistributes more than $1.3 trillion from Americans who are working to Americans who are retired. So this made me wonder, how much will I receive in benefits? I've never done this calculation. So using the inflation factors, I assumed that I would file at 67 and live until 95. And I also assumed that my wife would collect about 1/2 of my benefit. Now, in that scenario, over our lifetime, we would receive a total of just under $5.5 million in benefit payments. So I'm not real sure this is what Roosevelt had in mind when he created Social Security as a program to give some measure of protection against poverty-ridden old age. But look, I'm like everyone else. I've paid into this program. I want to be able to collect a benefit one day, and I don't want my benefit to be cut because I make a high income, and nor am I excited at all about any proposal that would raise my taxes while I'm working. But there is a solution that would be a win-win for everyone. All it requires is a simple change to the way inflation is calculated. So let me give you a little background on the inner workings of Social Security, and that will make all of this make a lot more sense. So to keep up with inflation, the Social Security system uses two types of inflation to help ensure that benefit payments reflect the general rise in the standard of living. They use wage inflation, as measured by the average wage index, and price inflation, as measured by a version of the consumer price index. Now, the version of inflation that is used depends on where you are in the timeline. The hinge point is your eligibility year, which is the year you die, become disabled, or turn 62. Prior to the eligibility year, your benefits are inflated by changes to wages, specifically, again, the average wage index. But beginning with your eligibility year, they are inflated with price inflation. Now, it hasn't always been this way. This method was put into place in the 1977 Social Security amendments because price inflation was soaring into the 70s, but wages were stagnant. And this meant that there were some people out there who were seeing their projections of Social Security benefits increase beyond what they were making while working because payments were tied to soaring price inflation instead of wage inflation. So they changed the calculation method, and this is what we've had ever since. But the problem is that for the last few decades, wages have been growing faster than prices. Now, I know that doesn't sound like a problem, but even a small difference in a growth rate over a long period of time can make a big difference. If we look at the yearly differences in wage inflation versus price inflation since 1978, you can see that in most years, wages grew faster than prices. And if we average this out, wages have grown at an average of 4.28% per year, and prices have grown at an average of 3.59%. Now, I know it's easy to think when you look at this that there's no way a change of that amount could make a sizable difference in the longevity of the Social Security Trust Fund. Well, it does. In fact, the Social Security Board of Trustees examined the impact of changing the system back to only increasing benefits tied to price inflation, and they found out that if it was put into place starting in 2029, it would solve 80% of the long-term shortfall. And get this, by the 75th year, it would put the Social Security Trust Fund at 172% surplus. So not only would this fix the program, it would ensure that it was there for future generations. And the best part is that it wouldn't require any tax increases or benefit cuts. So there's two big questions remaining then. Who could this affect? And secondly, why isn't this being talked about? So let's cover who will be affected first. The trustees report bases their analysis on this starting in 2029. That means that if it was implemented as discussed, this would affect anyone who is younger than 57 right now. So those who are already collecting benefits or getting close wouldn't see any change at all. But maybe the bigger question is, what kind of impact would this have for those people who would be affected? Essentially, all this would do is slow down the growth rate of a future benefit. And based on the average since 1978, that slowdown would be about 0.7% per year. But it may also be safe to assume that that slowdown would be slightly higher than that because if we look at the last 2 years of price inflation in this data, we've seen big increases, and that may be skewing the number some. So out of curiosity, I wanted to see how would this affect my future benefit. And instead of using the average price inflation over the last 45 years of 3.59%, I assumed that price inflation would only increase by about 2.5%. And the result was that in the year I filed for benefits, 67, my personal benefit would be $6,203 instead of the $7,243 it would have been under the current calculation method. So this would be a 14% difference. And then when you add in the benefit to my wife and you take it out over our lifetime, out to age 95, it would be just under 4.7 million in total benefits paid instead of the 5.5 million under the current calculation. Now that's not too bad in my book, but I know there are some who would position that as a cut to benefits. But let's face it, only in Washington politics is a smaller raise in the future considered a cut. So the next big question is, why isn't this being talked about? The only solutions we are hearing is things like raising the taxable wage base, giving less in benefits to higher income earners, and a few other extremely convoluted solutions like doing away with the tax deductibility of a 401k. Well, this is the cynical side of me, but the government often favors complex solutions over simple solutions because that's the ones that can be leveraged to justify tax increases and expand control. The simple truth is, after looking at this data, the fix is easy. It could be implemented with some very simple tweaks to the law, and it's a true win-win for everyone. Now, it's going to be interesting to watch this upcoming presidential election and see what proposals start coming out. Are they going to be the old policies that get trotted out every election season that appeal to their base? Or is someone going to finally have the gumption to stand up and say, hey, this is a common sense fix that may reduce benefits slightly for the people way down the line, but it will also ensure that they actually get a benefit. So who knows? If someone doesn't come up with something soon, I think I'm going to run for office. We'll see about that. But whatever happens, I'll be right here keeping you informed. So again, if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do that now. Thanks for watching.